the New York Metropolitans hosting the San Diego Padres. This Padres team I have loved from the start of the season. I thought they'd have one of the best baseball players joining them at midseason, and they did. Juan Soto. Fernando Tatis Jr. did not. But that starting pitching, I think it plays anywhere, and we're going to find out at Citi Field versus some of the other best starting pitching in baseball. Scherzer and DeGrom. I said them in that order for a reason, Trev, because we might have, I don't want to say funny business in Citi Field, but the Mets are trying to plan what could be the rest of their postseason, and that could change instantly. That top of the Mets lineup has been powerful and impactful all year. Alonso led the league in RBI. McNeil won the batting title with a little Lindor mixed in, setting Mets records at shortstop, and Brandon Nimmo along the way, with the guy at the end of that bullpen who's had one of the best relief pitcher seasons we've seen. Fire up the trumpets for Edwin Diaz. The San Diego Padres, they were chasing a ghost this year in the Los Angeles Dodgers as they blew away everyone in the field. We got a little nervous. At the deadline, another guy they added with Soto, Josh Hader. We were pretty ready to write him off, right? He got off to an awful start, and the Brewers were done with him. He kicked back into gear with some of their high-end starting pitching and an MVP-esque season from Manny Machado. This Padres team is super dangerous. And Trev, as excited as we got in the AL, talking about the young talent in Seattle and Toronto, and some good fundamental old-school baseball in Cleveland and Tampa, take your eyes to Citi Field, man, because this series has anything you could want.
The NL,
yeah,
the old dogs versus the old dogs, and the AL, yes, it's young guns versus young guns, and I like the difference between the two. I don't know where I want to start with this. I guess the pitching matchups are interesting, and this is kind of what has sparked the whole talk about saving one of your top two pitchers for Game 3. The Mets came out and said we're starting Scherzer. Now it has a little bit to do with DeGrom, and he had a blister. Yeah, also hasn't pitched great down the stretch, but I don't really care about that. Some people are pointing to that, and I'm telling you, people, it ain't that. You tell me if I could have one guy in the mound to save my life if he goes 6 innings, Jake DeGrom's like close to the top of the list, so we're going to be good with that, okay? He's got a blister. They want to give him as much time as possible, but the same thing we talked about before. It's if you win Game 1, you can put Bassett Game 2, have DeGrom ready for Game 3 or Game 1 of the divisional round, and that way you're getting DeGrom, Scherzer, and then DeGrom again at the end of the 5. And that way, this whole advantage that the Braves took from you, you neutralize a little bit because now you set up your pitching to kind of match theirs. Now, again, it has to go the right way for both the Padres and the Mets. You got to win Game 1. If you don't win Game 1, it's all out the window. And you got to win Game 2 or else it's all out the window too. So the funny business isn't so funny when you really start to think about it. It just kind of makes sense with where they're going. But I think that is going to be one of the topics and one of the big storylines of this series is that starting pitching. We know about the depth in San Diego. I'd give the top 2 over, obviously, to the Mets, but and you have Bassett there as your number 3. I think depth-wise, you go Padres, although the Mets are also no slouch in that department.
I think it's funny that, Seattle, Toronto, you can almost say pitching versus hitting. Rays versus Cleveland, a little bit of experience, youth, a lot of pitching. These teams match up, man. I mean, the closer at the end, Hader and Diaz. Yep, sign me up for both those guys. The 3 starting pitchers, are you kidding me? The Mets story all year, Scherzer, DeGrom, Bassett. These Padres, Snell is rolling. Yes. Joe Musgrove.
They're hot.
Joe Musgrove's final 4 starts, a 0.41 ERA. Yu Darvish. Talk about a guy that's been there, and when he's on, he's unhittable and fun to watch as anyone in baseball. I think these are brutal matchups for both teams. I think their strengths line up perfectly that I think the pressure falls on the Mets. right? You had the NL East locked up for most of the year. Everyone knows what happened. You got caught by an incredible Braves team. There's a little bit of shame in Mets land because that's how they like to live, but also you got caught by an incredible team, so there's not as much there. You got 3 games for your season in Citi Field. Buck Showalter back on the bench. We love ourselves some Buck. And it hasn't been talked about a lot this year, but the San Diego Padres and Bob Melvin, a guy that they made an emphasis on to go get, a guy that you know as well as anyone is beloved in baseball and regarded as a really good manager. Hasn't gotten much East Coast love as some of these other guys. These teams line up so well. I'm interested to see our guy Kevin, who's a kooky cat and does social media for us. He laid out an interesting point that if the Padres go up, that Citi Field electricity, those Mets, Jets fans in Long Island, they've got a tendency to want to lean into themselves in a little doom and gloom. That if their backs are against the wall, there's going to be some weird energy in that ballpark. That how could it be happening again? We are the new Mets. We have Cohen. We got Scherzer. I don't know, man. I think the Mets are a better team, and it's at their home, and they have a little bit more in their lineup. Josh Bell and Drury, 2 other pieces that the Padres got, haven't lived up to the billing in their San Diego Padres uniforms. That lineup outside of Machado and Soto can get thin really quick, but also if you're getting contributions from Cronenworth, who's been playing well, Jerks and Profar put a nice year together, that if there's dudes on for Soto and Machado, you're going to get hurt. That, man, I thought in my head that Toronto and Seattle was going to be the best series. I think you might see some defensive things there and some young guys in their first playoff series that may not be the prettiest baseball. This series, I think I've just changed. I think this is the series I'm most excited for.
Okay, I think because you like a little bit of misery. And I think one of these two, these are 2 very good teams. And here's a point that I have here. 12 months of baseball between them. Only 1 month, and that was the Padres in July, were they under 500. Neither of these teams ever had over 700 month either. So they've played just consistent baseball all year long. There's a note in here, the Padres never won more than 5 games in a row, never lost more than 5 games in a row. Consistent baseball. It's I don't know, man. I don't know what this series is going to come down to. Yeah, we're going to need some of those guys the Padres traded for to step up offensively. Soto has been doing that as of late, so you can bank on him being himself. I'm not worried about him, but they need a little bit of length in that lineup. So Bell, you got to step it up. Drury, you got to step it up. I'm curious to see what they do with the lineup. I do agree with you that if you just look at the rosters and kind of put your brain to it, I think the Mets have a roster advantage here. But again, it's the postseason, man. And we could have some guys absolutely carry the team because they have those stars on here. We gave Manny Machado the third base all JM team, and that pissed a lot of people off that wanted Nolan Arenado there. But Manny is that dude. He really is. And people, guess what? Gandalf and Galadriel's relationship was purely respect. There was no love there. I want to make that point while I'm talking about Machado. Okay? Machado can be the wizard for the Padres. And if he does step up and him and Soto kind of start doing the thing after they hit homers together, watch out.
Can I ask you, I've got a sick question because I kind of hate my answer. Who are the best 2 baseball players on the field?
I'm
not
going to include any starting pitching, so you know that.
Right.
Okay.
I wasn't even ruling them in.
They never have been. Manny Machado.
Are they both San Diego Padres?
Yes.
It's interesting, right?
Manny Machado and Juan Soto. Obviously, Lindor is there too. But I think, if you ask me who the 2 best players are overall in the careers, I would say those 2. And obviously, starting pitching, you don't get to be involved in this conversation.
Right. No, I just think it's interesting because obviously, I mean, Lindor, in a way, is in those guys' realm, right? Like how good he is at shortstop and all of that. And, Alonso is who he is. He's an absolute masher, deserves to be said with some of the best hitters in the game. McNeil won the batting title. He's got a chance to be the most impactful guy in this series just because if he comes to the plate with runners on the base in the right moment, a couple of times he's going to come through. He has to. His approach is just different. I'm interested to see with all of that. I told you the starting pitching matchups well. I think, like we just said, the Padres may have the two best players on the field. After that, it starts to get a little thinner where the Mets have a couple guys when you start adding Nimmo, Lindor, McNeil, Alonso. The depth in this series, the secondary bullpen pieces. Sure, Hader and Diaz are pretty dope, right? I love Adam Ottavino. He's been super nice to us. He can come in and wipe you out. He can also come in and get into some trouble. Seth Lugo, that breaking ball is electric. What's he going to look like? And who else from the Mets pen? Drew Smith, Trevor May. Who else is going to contribute? Well, for the Padres, you're looking at, Nick Martinez, Robert Suarez, the lefties Hill and Morejon. Innings 6, 7, and 8 in these games, I think are going to decide every game. Because you know what you're getting from these starting pitchers. You know what you're getting from these closers. Those relief innings, man, I think both fan bases are going to be holding their butts the whole time. And I think that's where these games get decided, which we talk about it a lot when we talk about the Dodgers. We talked about it with the Yankees, the Braves. Depth in baseball. It may be the most overlooked thing in the sport. But man, oh man, I think that's where this series gets decided because everything else lines up so well.
So who's deeper?
It's not me.
You just went on this rant, and then you ended it with, I think the depth is going to decide it. What depth are you talking about? You talking about just bullpen depth?
No. I think up and down the lineup, like I think, we are going to see some performances, whether it's a Trent Grisham or a Ha-Sung Kim, or is it, on the Mets side, is it going to be, could we see one of the kids step up? Francisco Alvarez hit his first homer the other day. Is he going to find himself in a big moment? A Naquin, a Guillorme. Mark Canha and Eddie Escobar not being mentioned yet feels a little sinful. Those guys have had Canha throughout the year, and Eddie Escobar especially of late. I think my depth speech in Citi Field, and now I've taken every home team, I'm going to take the New York Metropolitans. I've said it for a while now. Whichever NL East team ended up in the wild card, I was still going to believe in them. I think the Mets could end up having the pressure of 1,000 Suns, and this is probably my pick I'm the least confident in, because if the Padres could go Darvish Musgrove. They could go Darvish Snell. And you could be sitting there down in the 8th inning in both games. Like, that's just how those guys can be. At the same time, you could say that with the Mets starting pitching just as easily. I think the depth, the Mets are a deeper team in City. I think the Padres are going to be hanging their heads saying, man, if we had Fernando Tatis, could we not take down any team in this tournament? I'm going to go New York Mets. I'm going to believe in it because I believe in Buck and I believe in the depth along with matching high-end talent in this series.
Baseball!
That is my guess, and then we are done here talking about this series. I love when I have the last word. Don't you dare say another one, okay? I agree with you. The depth is on the Mets side, especially offensively. No doubt.
The Padres.
The only thing I'm looking at here, though, I like these starting pitchers. I don't like them as well. I do like some of them as people, but you know how I feel.
Yeah.
DeGrom, Scherzer, and Bassett are all kind of, for lack of a better word, limping into the playoffs. They haven't pitched their best down the stretch. And on the other side, these guys are on fire, dude. So that's the only holdup I have. I want to pick the Mets, and I want to say the Mets are going to steamroll this series. But if we're getting like a DeGrom with a blister and who's like kind of like still feeling it out, and like maybe a tired Scherzer and not 100% Bassett, then that changes things. That's the name of the game in the playoffs, man. I'm going Padres. I think they shock the world. I do. I think they shock the world. I think we might see some outfield defense come into play. Machado's gonna have a big series. I like that he's okay with being the villain and the heel because he's gonna be that at Citi Field, dude. You were gonna get booed, and it is going to be bad. But I think he steps up, and I think we might just see Juan Soto take the whole damn thing over. So I'm going San Diego Padres, and I think it goes 3 games.
It's I mentioned what I'm excited for in the playoff emotions, the up and down, shutting down the crowd. Soto, Machado, from the previous series, Randy, if their first at bat is a double off the wall, those guys enter like a you can't pitch to them area.
That's the one thing is I don't know how much Machado's going to see to hit, dude.
If Soto's on, you can't walk both those guys. Brandon Nimmo, I haven't talked about you a lot. Whenever I talk about the Mets, I'd say I don't really know who you are. You had a good last week leading into this. You're entering free agency. You're the leadoff guy. You get at bats before Lindor, McNeil, Alonso. Have a series. Be Trey Turner from that Nationals team because you can mess this whole thing up if you get on base like you can. Man, that's the series I'm most excited for. It's true.